guys, today we're ranking all 101 movies I saw this year. So I'm going to just pull up quick summaries of why I don't like the movies to really keep with it. Because I don't want to bore you with, explaining the plot of the movie. Let's explain all the good parts of the movies. So we'll be starting at the absolute bottom here. And actually, this is the next one. And the absolute worst movie I have seen of this year is What Men Want, which is actually the bottom movie. I just stopped watching the movie after 10 minutes because it was just so horrible. The next movie on the list is EMP Free Days. Another movie I saw exactly at the same time. The movie was a movie basically about an EMP attack. If you don't know what that is, it basically means no more electricity. The movie is a bit unrealistic because they actually confirmed that most cars have protections against EMPs. This movie is a bit unrealistic as well. Some of the things that they want you to see, basically you can't see. It just, the main villains are these two guys that just want to steal people's stuff, and they asked them. And basically, realistically, they sort of just joined together, but they want to make some tension in the movie. So, yep, this movie was overall pretty boring and pretty uneventful. Number 99 is Jaws the Revenge. Jaws the Revenge is probably the worst Jaws movie ever made. It is horribly made. Jaws 3 was pretty funny, but Jaws the Revenge was pretty bad. It was just a horrible experience all and throughout. The next movie on the list is number 98. Worst movies is okay after the twos. Number 98 has to be the Velocipastor. It isn't so bad, but it's funny movie. That's basically what it is. The movie did get boring after a while. Number 97. Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey was a giant turd released by DC. It was not funny at all. Okay, there's like 2 funny scenes at it. That's it. But this movie is supposed to be a comedy. And most of the scenes I was rolling my eyes at. And I do not like Harley Quinn either, so this movie was just already pretty bad. The next movie, 96, is Fast Color. It's just boring. It's just not fun. Number 95, Redcon 1. Redcon 1 is basically a ripoff of the Last of Us. Basically it's about these guys that go around in the UK, and basically they want to destroy this entire area, but there's still people alive, and then for some reason this random girl is the kill. So, yep, that movie completely sucked. Number 95, Men in Black International. Well, it's an entire. If you want to be insulted, if you're a man and like Men in Black, if you want to be insulted your entire time, just watch this movie. Number 9, next movie is. Okay, I'll stop saying the numbers. The next movie is X-Men Dark Phoenix. This is another boy. The X-Men Dark Phoenix was not that great. It was a horrible movie, and even the critics said so. This movie was just forgettable, and just a movie that no one's going to remember. The next movie is American Assassin. American Assassin is basically just another horrible, movie that's based off a true story. And it's just something that doesn't really add anything new to its genre. Next is Jaws 3D. Jaws 3D is just hilariously bad. Next is Escape Room. Yep, this movie existed. Escape Room was just a horrible movie. And it's just a ripoff of several other similar and better movies as well. The characters were just not that great either. It was kind of like the horrible third Spy Kids movie. The last movie is Dark Fate. Dark Fate is just another boring feminist movie. Now we're getting to the movies that I gave a 4 out of 10. And the next movie on the list is Ad Astra. It's just super boring. There's just nothing fun with anything that went on in Ad Astra. Just saying the truth. Next movie is Junior. It's just a pretty weird movie. Yep, this is the entire part of the movie. It was a movie that was hilariously bad, like Jaws 3D. But I had more time watching this than watching Jaws 3D or Velocipastor. The next movie is Father Figures, a boring movie, and it's not really that fun. Next movie on the list is Grass. This movie was just a massive letdown. It's just why did they choose the ending that they chose in the movie? Why? And now we're getting to the 5 out of 10 movies, whereas the first movie is Twins. Twins was is the lowest out of these movies here. It's because it was pretty disappointing. Twins was just a very disappointing movie. It was supposed to be a classic comedy, but it's just not that funny as some other movies. Next movie is Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. I had fun watching this, but it's not my favorite Star Wars movie. I put it on par with Attack of the Clones as well. And also the latter half of the movie was kind of more boring. It is kind of just felt like The Last Jedi over again. But at least it was more entertaining than The Last Jedi. Next is Sharknado. Yep, I gave it this score because it's just... Yep, enough said. Even the title describes itself. So next is the 6 out of 10 movies. And there's a lot of these types of movies here. Yep, a lot of these movies here. So the next movie on the list has to be Prepper. So basically it's about these guys prepping for the apocalypse. It was a pretty interesting and cool movie, but I wouldn't give it a much higher score because it wasn't that great at many parts. But basically it's basically, yeah, if there's something bad going on, you should basically prepare for it. The next movie is Police Academy 2. Police Academy 2 is a sequel that isn't as fun as the original. So yep, it's here. Next is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. This is probably my least favorite Indiana Jones movie, and that's because of all the gross parts of the movie. I just did not like watching this movie. I did not like I did not like the setting of this movie. It was pretty, it was pretty weird. The character, it's just not a good movie. It's just not a good movie. That great of a movie. I think it is 6 because it still had some pretty good action scenes, and the storyline at points was pretty good. But it's not that great. It almost got saved from being below a 6 out of 10. It just like Police Academy 2, it nearly instant to the 6 out of 10 category. The next movie on the list is The Expendables 3. It was just kind of like the third movie that basically people didn't really need. They just made this because they just want to make more, the story, everything. It's just, yep, not that great. The next movie on the list is My Five Lives. This movie was much better than the IMDb score made out to be, but it isn't an amazing movie. It isn't as great as the other movies that he made that are out there. There's better comedy movies out there. The next movie is the not-so-cinematic disaster World Breaks the Internet. World Breaks the Internet actually had a pretty decent ending, but most of the movie was not that great. So, yep, World Breaks the... Yeah, and also they kind of do break character and may end this movie as well. The next movie on the list is Crawl. Crawl is basically a gator movie. That's basically all it is. It isn't the best, but it isn't the worst. And it's in the middle of the 6 out of 10 movies. Next is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. This movie had some pretty bad CGI, and also does a pretty weird ending, but it was overall entertaining and way better than the Temple of Doom. The next movie on the list is Grown Ups 2. Grown Ups 2 was pretty funny, but it's not as great as the first one. And then, let's go to the last movie. Next is The Best of Benny Hill. It is funny, but it isn't as great as the TV show. So, yep. The next movie on the list is Cocktail. Cocktail had a pretty good story, but kind of got boring after the moment. And it had a 5.9 Metacritic, which is actually very close to my score as well. So, yep. And the last movies on the list is Impractical Jokers, the movie. There's actually one more movie. There's, I think, one more movie after this. But, yep, this movie was pretty funny. It's basically like an extended episode of the TV series. So, yep. The last movie on this list is Twister. Twister is kind of like a movie that's kind of dated for its time. And, yep, there we go. Next, we have 7 out of 10s. Which goes all the way, this is like 20 movies. Yep, we have to rank all of these movies from worst to best. Coming at last place of all of these movies, because they go from order, I think has to be Doolittle. Doolittle was a pretty fun movie. It's another one of those movies that barely into the 7 out of 10 list. It's a pretty funny movie, but it isn't my choice for a Robert Downey Jr. movie at all. So, yep, it's at the bottom of this list. The next movie on the list is another movie that barely into the 7 out of 10 list is Rambo: The Last Blood. Because IMDb does not allow you to give between scores, I will probably give this a 6.8 or 6.7 out of 10. Rambo: Last Blood was just, it isn't my favorite Rambo movie, but definitely isn't the worst movie of the year, like people said it, like the critics said it was. It was a pretty good, okay movie. The other Rambo movies are much better. Another movie on the list is The Upside. The Upside also barely made on the 7 out of 10 because it's kind of forgettable at this as well. So it's in the bottom list of the 7 out of 10 movies. The last movie in the very bottom list of the 7 out of 10 movies has to be which one is it? The Enforcer. The Enforcer was a pretty great action movie, and it was had pretty good action scenes and a pretty decent story. Same thing goes with the Deadpool. Basically, he has to go after these celebrities and stuff. It was pretty decent. So yep, they barely inside of the being 7 out of 10. So now we're getting to the middle of the road movies. The first movie on the list is Biloxi Blues. It was pretty funny. It had some pretty funny moments. It also had a pretty good storyline as well. Basically, it's about a boot camp, and yep, during the Second World War. And again, they didn't actually get to go to the Second World War because it ended. Another war movie is Sergeant Stubby, an American Hero. This movie was pretty cute and pretty fun to watch. It was kind of like a pretty good. It was also a pretty good war movie. It also honored a very great war hero as well, which was a dog. So yep, there we go. The next movie is The Island. Basically, it's about these people living on this weird colony, and yep, they basically have to chosen to go to the island, which is supposedly the last but yep, that isn't. Yep, basically, it's very similar to another movie that is further on it's also on the list also on this list as well. The next movie on the list is Knives Out. Knives Out was not the masterpiece the critics make it out to be. Knives Out isn't bad per se, but it isn't my favorite movie of 2019. But it isn't as fun. It still had some pretty funny moments, but it's a movie that I wouldn't really watch twice. The next movie on the list is Geostorm. Yep, this movie isn't as bad as the critics made it out to be. Geostorm is pretty similar to several other movies like The Day, but it's they basically made us satellites to control the global climate, and of course it all backfired and the chaos basically ensued. Basically, they have to basically stop it from, before the world's climate goes out of whack, essentially, which is proof that you should not control the climate, essentially. You should not control the Earth's climate. Next is 127 Hours. This movie was kind of disturbing, but it was kind of good, because it's based off a true story about a mountain climber who becomes trapped in a boulder, and basically how he has to survive through this very, very, very difficult 127 hours. And Bruce Almighty. Next movie is Bruce Almighty. Bruce Almighty was a very, very, very funny and great movie. It is basically a classic Jim Carrey movie. The next movie is Rambo. Rambo is a pretty good, gritty movie, and yeah, it's a pretty enjoyable movie. Not my favorite Rambo movie, but yep, definitely is worthy of this list. The next movie on the list is Planes, Trains, Automobiles. It isn't his best movie, John Candy's best movie. I think that Uncle Buck is a better movie, but it was still a pretty good story. Same thing with Jingle All the Way. This movie, yep, it was just funny because Arnold Schwarzenegger was in this movie. The next movie on the list is 47 Ronin. It was actually a pretty good movie. The critics said, despite this movie being a massive failure, I bet this movie released after John Wick 3, I bet this movie will probably made way more money than it actually is. This movie was made before the revival of Keanu Reeves as well. So yep, there we go. And now let's get into the upper list. These are nearly 8 out of 10s. The first movie is Isle of Dogs. Isle of Dogs is a pretty good movie. It's set in Japan. Basically, these dogs have to follow this, boy around. And this boy wants to actually help the dogs. And yep, it's a pretty good and entertaining pretty good movie. And it's a pretty good movie. The dogs are sent to this island because the people hate dogs so much. And it was actually a pretty good movie. Next movie on this list is Grown Ups. It was a very, very funny movie. But there's some things that keep it out of being in the 8 out of 10 movies. Same thing can be applied to the Hitman's Bodyguard. Hitman's Bodyguard was pretty funny, especially considering it has Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson in it. Two very amazing actors. But it's not the best comedy in the world, but the story was also pretty good, but it's not really my favorite comedy. Another movie that really keeps it out is Into the Storm. It's another movie that is basically about a massive storm. It is very similar to the movie Twister as well, basically about tornadoes and stuff. It was a pretty good movie and definitely was less cheesy than Twister, which is considered the classic tornado movie. Sons of Intelligence was a very, very funny movie, but it isn't as funny as some others, which keeps it out of this list. Same thing with Kindergarten Cop as well. Kindergarten Cop was a very, very funny and great movie, but it barely keeps it out of the top of the list. And then we can get to the top of this list for now. So the first movie is Creed 2. Creed 2 is basically the sequel to Creed, and I almost gave it an 8 out of 10. But there were a few small things that kept it being an 8 out of 10. I didn't want to overwhelm the 8 out of 10 category, so it's very, very close to 8 out of 10 essentially. Same thing with 13 Days. It was a very great movie about the Cuban Missile Crisis. And yep, it almost got an 8 out of 10 as well on this list. Same thing with The Expendables. The Expendables is a pretty great action movie, but again, it's those better action movies out there, so it kept it out of the list. And the last movie is Replicas. This movie isn't as bad as the critics make it out to be. Maybe it's because critics didn't like the fact that people got cloned, but it was actually a pretty good movie at the end of the day. But again, there are a few flaws that keep it out of being an 8 out of 10. I'm seeing if I covered all the movies yet. Yep, there we go. So I'm going to make a part 2 to this list of every movie I have seen of the year. And yep, it's going to get better and better. There's a lot of movies that have 8 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s, and 10s out of 10s. So yep, that's basically it. Goodbye.